Well, hello everybody. It's the end of Charlotte's Web. We've got a few more pages to enjoy and then we've finished this amazing book. So I'll read a little section of the chapter that we finished on just to get us back into it, and then we'll be finishing our story. So thank you so much for all your support and thanks for tuning in. One fine morning, after breakfast, Wilbur stood watching his precious egg sack. He wasn't thinking of anything much. But as he stood there, he noticed something move. He stepped closer and stared. A tiny spider crawled from the sack. It was no bigger than the grain of sand, no bigger than the head of a pin. Its body was grey with a black stripe underneath, and its legs were grey and tan. It looked just like Charlotte. Wilbur trembled all over when he saw it. The little spider waved at him. Then Wilbur looked more closely. 2 more little spiders crawled out, and they also waved. They climbed round and round on the sack, exploring their new world. Then 3 more little spiders, then 8, then 10. Charlotte's children were here at last. Wilbur's heart pounded. He began to squeal with excitement, and then he raced in circles, kicking manure up into the air. Then he turned a backflip. Then he planted his front feet and came to a stop in front of Charlotte's children. "Hello there," he said. The first spider said hello, but its voice was so small that Wilbur couldn't hear it. "I'm an old friend of your mother's," said Wilbur. "I'm glad to see you. Are you all right? Is everything all right?" The little spiders waved their forelegs at him. Wilbur could see by the way that they acted that they were glad to see him too. "Is there anything I can get for you? Is there anything you need?" The young spiders just waved. For several days and several nights they crawled here and there, up and down, around and about, waving at Wilbur, trailing tiny draglines of silk behind them, and exploring their home. There were dozens and dozens of them. Wilbur couldn't count them, but he knew that he had a great many new friends. They grew quite rapidly. Soon each was as big as a BB pellet. They made tiny webs near the sack. Then came a quiet morning, when Mr. Zuckerman opened a door on the north side of the barn. A warm draught of rising air blew softly across the barn cellar. The air smelled of damp earth, of the spruce woods, of the sweet, sweet springtime. And the baby spiders, too, felt the warm updraft. One little spider climbed to the top of the fence. And then it did something that came as a great surprise to Wilbur. The little spider stood on its head, pointed its spinnerets in the air, and let loose a cloud of fine silk. The silk formed a balloon. As Wilbur watched, the spider let go of the fence and rose up, up, up into the air. "Goodbye," it said as it sailed through the doorway. Wait a minute," screamed Wilbur. "Where do you think you're going?" But the spider was already out of sight. Then another baby spider crawled to the top of the fence, stood on its head, made a balloon, and sailed away as well. Then another spider, then another. Soon the air was filled with tiny balloons, and each balloon carried a little spider. Wilbur was frantic, though. Charlotte's babies were disappearing, and at a great rate. "Come back, children!" he cried. "Goodbye," they crawled. "Goodbye, goodbye." At last, one little spider took time enough to stop and talk to Wilbur before making its balloon. "We're leaving here on the warm updraft. This is our moment for setting forth. We're aeronauts, and we're going out to see the world and to make webs for ourselves." But where?" asked Wilbur. "Wherever the wind takes us. High, low, near or far. East or west, north or south. We take to the breeze, we go as we please." Are all of you going?" asked Wilbur. "You can't all go. I'd be left alone with no friends. Your mother wouldn't want that to happen, I'm sure." The air was now so full of balloonists that the barn cellar looked almost as though a mist had gathered. Balloons by the dozen were rising, circling, drifting, and leaving, away through the door, sailing off into the gentle wind. Cries of "Goodbye, goodbye" came weakly to Wilbur's ears, and he couldn't bear to watch any more. In sorrow, he sank to the ground and closed his eyes. It seemed like the end of the world, to be deserted by Charlotte's children. Wilbur cried himself to sleep. When he awoke, it was late afternoon. He looked at the egg sack, and it was empty. He looked into the air. The balloonists were gone. Then he walked drearily to the doorway where Charlotte's web used to be. He was standing there, thinking of his old friend, when he heard a small voice. "Salutations," it said. "I'm up here." "So am I," said another tiny voice. "So am I," said a third voice. "3 of us are staying. We like this place, and we like you." Wilbur looked up, and at the top of the doorway 3 small webs were being constructed. On each web, working busily, was one of Charlotte's daughters. "Can I take this to mean," asked Wilbur, "that you have definitely decided to live here in the barn cellar, and that I'm going to have 3 friends?" "You can indeed," said the spiders. "What are your names, please?" asked Wilbur, trembling with joy. "I'll tell you my name," replied the first little spider, "if you tell me why you're trembling." "I'm trembling with joy," said Wilbur. "Then my name is Joy," said the first spider. "What was my mother's middle initial?" asked the second spider. "A," said Wilbur. "Charlotte A. Cavatica." "Then my name is Aranea," said the spider. "How about me?" asked the third little spider. "Will you just pick out a nice, sensible name for me? Something not too long, not too fancy, and not too dumb." Wilbur thought hard. How about Nellie?" he suggested. "Fine, I like that very much," said the third spider. "You may call me Nellie." She daintily fastened her orb line to the next spoke of the web. Wilbur's heart brimmed with happiness. He felt he should make a short speech on this very important occasion. Joy, Aranea, and Nellie, welcome to the barn cellar. You have chosen a hallowed doorway from which to string your webs. I think it's only fair to tell you that I was very devoted to your mother. I owe my very life to her. She was brilliant, beautiful, and loyal to the end. I shall always treasure her memory. To you, her daughters, I pledge my friendship forever and ever." "I pledge mine," said Joy. "I do too," said Aranea. "And so do I," said Nellie, who had just managed to catch a small gnat. It was a very happy day for Wilbur, and many more happy days followed. As time went on, and the months and years came and went, he was never without friends. Fern did not come regularly to the barn any more. She was growing up and was more careful to avoid childish things, like sitting on a milk stool near a pig pen. But Charlotte's children and grandchildren, yes, and great-grandchildren, year after year, lived in the doorway. Each spring there would be new little spiders hatching out to take the place of the old. Most of them sailed away on their balloons, but always 2 or 3 stayed and set up housekeeping in the doorway. And Mr. Zuckerman, well, he took fine care of Wilbur for all the rest of his days. And the pig was often visited by friends and admirers, for nobody ever forgot the year of his triumph and the miracle of the message in the web. Life in the barn was good, day and night, winter and summer, spring and autumn, dull days and bright days. It was the best place to be, thought Wilbur, this warm, delicious cellar, with the garrulous geese, with the changing seasons, the heat of the sun, the passage of swallows, the nearness of rats, the sameness of sheep, the love of spiders, the smell of manure, and the glory of everything. Wilbur never forgot Charlotte. Although he loved her children and her grandchildren dearly, none of the new spiders ever quite took her place in his heart. She was in a class by herself. It's not often that someone comes along who is a true friend and a good writer, and Charlotte was both. Well, thank you very much for enjoying that story with us, everybody, and I hope you have a lovely evening.